Alright, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We're gonna hop into the next series as I get my headphones back in. Beautiful behind the ear headphones. It's all fancy production style and everything. So I don't have a giant headset over my head. But again, the next series is going to be PiLiPiLi versus Neeb. I'll go ahead and get the overlay up to date. It is going to start off 0-0. This should be a best of 3, as this is the winners semifinals. Winners semis. And yeah. So while we have a little bit of time and we're waiting for those that first set of invites and everything, make sure that okay, they're not in game yet. And I do apologize for the slightly longer break. Again, I was using the restroom. I've been casting since 6 a.m. and it's now 11:30, but I could not be more excited in case it doesn't show. I'm legitimately always very excited to cast a lot of these North American events. But let's take a look at my awesome statistics screen because we have more people here than we did before. As we hop to our statistics screen, boom. Protoss versus Protoss, Neeb versus PiLiPiLi. For those who are unfamiliar with these guys, first of all, Neeb on his new quote-unquote team/sponsor, Ting, has won an absurd amount of money lately. $44,000 in prize money. As a United States player, and his current PvP win rate is looking pretty damn good. 72% win rate, and that is higher than his average. I think that's the way that I tend to look at things, because, you know, depends on who you're playing and everything, but it's your average and seeing, you know, what are the better matchups. And because his 72% win rate is higher than his total win rate, you can assume PvP is one of his stronger matchups. Of course, PiLiPiLi, also a really solid Protoss player, has definitely been up and coming in the last couple of weeks. And I wouldn't really say in the sense that, you know, people didn't really know who he was. I still think he was still one of the best top 5 Protoss players in North America. But I think that in the past couple of weeks, he's maybe become top 3. Arguably like top 4. I would actually say it's kind of like a Neeb and Puck at the top. And then I would say PiLiPiLi and Bales right behind them. But I could very well see PiLiPiLi potentially taking a series off of Neeb. It's going to be difficult though. I would be lying if I told you that it was going to be easy. But regardless, PiLiPiLi, Kazakhstan, you might be wondering why is he from Kazakhstan? This is a North American qualifier. Well, PiLiPiLi had actually moved to from Kazakhstan to America a few years ago. He's been living here for a while. It was actually really impressive because he didn't really speak much English when he moved here, but he speaks great English now. He's definitely been adopted, very similar to Masa as one of our own. But taking a look, match history, the last couple times these two players played against each other, you can see that Neeb has a pretty damn good win rate versus PiLiPiLi. 6-1 overall in total matches that they've played. PiLiPiLi did manage to take one series, and you can see that was in the SC2 Improved Team League. It was a best of 1. And it was between Team On Fire and Systrom Gaming. So that was not only that, but it was a couple of months ago. The last 2 times that these two guys faced in the past couple of months, it has been 3-0s in favor of Neeb in best of 5. So PiLiPiLi, I will say, and I've been saying this before, he has been playing the StarCraft of his life lately. He has not played StarCraft as well as he has in the past couple of weeks, I would say. And because of that, he's been getting much better results than he ever has. So I'm really interested to see how things are going to shape up over here. Is PiLiPiLi playing so much better that now he can actually take on Neeb? He's already taken on players of the same level as Neeb, granted in a different matchup, but like Masa is considered widely, I think, to be one of the best players in North America, in contention with Neeb at certain points. Like, he is one of the few people that I think actually really gives Neeb a very big run for his money. So can PiLiPiLi push that a little bit further into a matchup that clearly he doesn't have the best win rate in right now? Comparatively, you saw his win rates around like 65-ish or almost 70-ish%, but his PvP win rate is around 59%. So it's a much, much lower. It's definitely one of his worst matchups, if you saw that earlier statistics screen. So that's what I'm waiting to find out. First map is going to be Ruins Endion. Do not actually have the map intro for this. It looks like Neeb is ready. PiLiPiLi wants a minute. So I'll go ahead and go over the bracket and give a couple of other updates that you guys might be interested in. So, seems like Masa ended up advancing on over Semper. I have been talking up Masa. Masa is an absolute badass. But being able to advance on over Semper 2-1, seems like it was a pretty close series. Juggernaut Jason, we already saw earlier, advanced on over Josh 2-0. So Masa and Juggernaut Jason are playing right now. I believe that is being casted over on twitch.tv/Wardy, Wardy with 3 eyes. Take TV, I believe, is just broadcasting this series. And in the losers bracket, we had Jon Snow advance on over No Regret. It doesn't say what the score is, it just says Jon Snow advanced on over No Regret. So that was a very, very fast series. But Jon Snow's now playing versus Panda Bear Me in the losers round 4, which I suppose you can call like the first round semifinals for the losers, because there are 4 players in the losers bracket at that point. And Panda Bear Me, yeah, had lost to Neeb earlier on, so no shame in losing to Neeb. The other players still left over. There's a Semper versus Puck match that's going on right now. That is an insanely awesome series. Alongside this series, because this series is going to be awesome, that series looks like another top-notch one. So definitely looking forward to seeing who the results of that, who comes out of that ahead. But then the other series that's left over is Josh versus Steadfast. Now Steadfast is I would say like an up-and-coming NA Zerg player. I've actually done some casting with him. He's a really, really cool and awesome guy. And I think him versus Josh, I think it could be pretty even, because Josh played relatively well in the series that we saw versus him versus Juggernaut Jason. He didn't fall drastically behind. It wasn't like his mechanics were so unbelievably subpar by any means. So I really want to see where that actually ends up going. But I will say, whoever wins that, I think that they're very much the underdog going into the winner of Semper versus Puck. Regardless, guys, we are finally jumping into it. Let's go ahead and see who wins this game. As we spawn down here in the bottom left-hand corner of the map, atop of the red Protoss player from Storm Gaming. Been playing out of his mind lately. Let's see if we can continue it in this matchup. Give it up for PiLiPiLi. And his opponent spawning down here at the bottom right-hand corner of the map, the blue Protoss player from Ting, representing his sponsor Ting. Give it up for Neeb, the literal god. And one other thing I will note is that PiLiPiLi, yeah, his PvP not always his best matchup, it seems, but in that IEM Shanghai qualifier, and I keep bringing that up because it was such a good indicator of PiLiPiLi starting to play out of his mind the past couple of weeks. He not only beat Masa, but he'd also, and Jon Snow. So we had the PVT, we had the PVZ. He also beat Puck, who I think is arguably the second best or potentially one of the best Protoss players in North America. And I kind of said this before. It goes like Puck and Neeb, and then Bales and PiLiPiLi right behind him. That's my kind of rankings. With Puck and Neeb kind of actually inching pretty closely together, as well as PiLiPiLi and Bales inching pretty closely against each other. But that does mean that PiLiPiLi has stepped up his PvP game as of late. I talked to him before the match. He said he wasn't really feeling too great about facing Neeb. There are a little bit of nerves that go into that. You can psych yourself out. But at the same time, there are some players, and I think PiLiPiLi is one of those players, who, when you feel like you're going to lose a match versus someone, it actually calms you down because you suddenly don't have expectations. Imagine if, for example, you have that friend. You have that friend that you know that you're better than, you can feel that you're better than, and you had to play that player, that person, that friend in a match. And suddenly you're thinking, oh God, like, I have to win this because I don't want to live with the shame that comes with losing to that person, because then they're going to hold it over my head for ages. Everyone's going to be talking about it. You really don't want to be in that position. I do really quickly want to note, PiLiPiLi's halted pro production a little bit for a decent amount of time now to get up an earlier Stargate, so he's already falling 1 pro behind, is potentially going to fall down a little bit further if Neeb starts up that worker production anytime soon. We do have a double Adept opening coming out from both of these players, but we do have a follow-up of Stalkers coming out from Neeb, whereas PiLiPiLi only getting out 1 Stalker. I think that Neeb, yeah, has a slight advantage in the micro over here, as his Adepts are, oh God, a little bit of a miss micro over there from PiLiPiLi, as he does waste 1 shot on the other Adept that had more than enough health. PiLiPiLi's Adept is going to be able to escape out of here, manage to get over the 3rd expansion, but really he does want to scout out and see, is there anything over the natural? At the same time, Neeb gets to the natural, sees PiLiPiLi, has not taken a super fast Nexus, and is going to also spot out that there is a Stargate on the way. Or I should say Stargate producing an Oracle that's on the way. Now at the same time, I do believe the Adept for PiLiPiLi moved in and saw not a whole lot. Saw that there was the Nexus down, and I think that's going to be an important thing, but the Twilight Council is what comes down immediately afterwards. So Neeb is going to be trying to prepare and saying like, okay, if I can deal with this this Oracle opening and not really take a whole lot of damage, then I'm actually going to be in a pretty decent spot, because there I have my Twilight Council, I can get up a faster Blink, I can put on a little bit of pressure there, maybe I can get up a faster Robo, and just get up a better army overall. Even has a couple of sentries out, ready and waiting to not only do force fields if you end up in the Immortal Stalker versus Immortal Stalker composition fight, but it's also just nice for hallucinated scouts and keeping an eye on your opponent. This Oracle for PiLiPiLi going to be a substitute for that, even though he has some sentries. Sentries, again, going to be useful for force shields, for Guardian Shield, but the Oracle can throw down the Revelations now. The Oracle can dance around inside the main base in the natural and get a scout out on exactly what Neeb is up to. In fact, he's going to be able to have a great opportunity over here, as the Mothership Core is kind of a little bit out of position. Well, no. Going to be able to zone out. And I like the fact, you look at the positioning, these two pylons are effectively protecting this Twilight Council. PiLiPiLi might kind of anticipate, yeah, there's probably a Twilight, and yeah, he does end up seeing it now with the Revelation thrown down on those probes. But seeing that it's being chrono boosted out, the Blink, I think PiLiPiLi knows he's got to be a little bit careful. Got to get out some of those Immortals and not play too greedy at this point. Overall, though, the game is looking kind of even-ish. I will say that PiLiPiLi halted probe production still a little bit longer than Neeb, though. And this is not like TVT where you have just mules and you can immediately use the mules to catch up on that mineral income. PvP, having a small, even like 4 or 5 workers does play a huge impact actually in the matchup. Having that extra mineral income, you can make more adepts, you can throw down additional gateways. And even a lot of the time, the Immortals themselves are pretty mineral intensive. We do see the Oracle end up unfortunately falling for PiLiPiLi. But yeah, those Immortals, they are 250 minerals, 100 gas. They are pretty expensive in terms of minerals. So, as we see additional Immortal production, PiLiPiLi is definitely going to have a really nice edge in the Immortal count. As Neeb just getting up that later Robo, in a way, I kind of feel like it's not really working for him. Because, yeah, he got up the faster Twilight, he can get up faster upgrades and stuff, so you have +1 weapons already on the way. Forge is kind of a little bit further behind for PiLiPiLi, but it's not like he was starting up +2 weapons already. PiLiPiLi is getting up his own Twilight Council. And at the same time, as well, Blink is nice, but I don't really know if he's going to be able... he has to make use of Blink sometime in the next minute or two before PiLiPiLi also gets up Blink, because otherwise, yeah, getting up Blink earlier is great, but it doesn't provide you an advantage if you don't do anything with it until your opponent gets up Blink. If you start up Immortal production faster than your opponent and continue Immortal production, you're going to continue to have that 1 or 2 Immortal advantage unless your opponent gets up another Robo Real production. Oh, a bad Blink over there from Neeb, uncharacteristic. He's gonna end up losing 3 of these Stalkers. 1 of the Stalkers may be able to get out of here, 2 of them do get out. So barely manages to save that with some forces that actually work against PiLiPiLi, ironically enough. But still, PiLiPiLi able to snag a couple of those units, and definitely going to feel happy about that. Again, this Immortal count is just continuing to climb further and further ahead for PiLiPiLi. Both of these players throwing down their Temple Archons as well, getting ready to potentially move into the later game Archon stage. This is one of the matchups where you can go into Disruptor play, but you do have to be a little bit careful, because when you don't have a lot of disruptors, if you only have like 2 or 3 disruptors, and your opponent's been making Immortals, you can actually just die very quickly to the big counter swing. Your opponent is constantly scouting out with hallucinated Phoenixes, you're constantly scouting out with maybe even a Warp Prism harassment and everything. There's a lot of things that allow you to keep an eye on your opponent's army, and if you see that they're trying to make that transition, you just go, you just push in, and if you even just dodge the 1 or 2 disruptor shots that they have, and you have 2 more Immortals in them or something because they invested into the robotics base and into that disruptor, you're suddenly a massive advantage in the engagement. And oh, we're seeing some decent force fields over here, making it a little bit awkward. Neeb having to blink back. He does have a couple Archons now, so those are going to be useful for knocking down any potential force fields that, you know, PiLiPiLi also has his own Archons available to do. Hallucinate Phoenixes coming out once again, but here comes the Warp Prism that's going to be scouting around for Neeb. Going to be able to get into the third expansion. PiLiPiLi not too far away from there, but there's only 4 Stalkers here, so it's going to be able to, you know, it's I guess half a shot a probe because you only need well, I guess it's 1 shot the probe with the 4 Stalkers. What am I talking about? I'm thinking about a depths that 2-shot probes. But regardless, getting a little bit of harassment done, forcing out some photon overcharges. It's definitely not too bad. Maybe trying to pull PiLiPiLi out of position. He does manage to almost get the pylon, 1 shot away from death. Charge is not finished. Oh no, charge is finished up for these zealots, it seems. He's going to be able to actually do some nice damage to these Stalkers. Stalkers do blink over the rocks, and that's going to provide him a little bit of safety and buy a bit of time. But how much time is really a little bit? With 5 Immortals knocking down these rocks, they're going to be absolutely evaporated in a matter of seconds. War Prism coming back in over here for Neeb, but here we go. We got a couple of cannons over here, and I really like this. This in addition with the Mothership Core for the Photon Overcharge. Oh, this War Prism is actually, if it got Focus Fire down by the cannon, he could actually do a really nice job over here. Already getting some good damage on it, getting it fairly low. The rocks were knocked down, both of them. And this does provide PiLiPiLi an opportunity to move in. Warp Prism, though, is going to be the big thing. He warps in a couple of units. He's going to try and come in with a flank for the Zealots from the backside. These Zealots do have charge. Here we go. They're coming on in. They're going to try and go after the Disruptor. He chose to focus right down the Disruptor. The Disruptor shot does go off, but it only hits 2 of the Immortals. And PiLiPiLi, I feel like, has taken a pretty decent engagement over here. He has a massive Immortal lead. The Warp Prism coming back in. It's going to try and move over here. It's in range of the Stalkers, though, from the high ground. He does manage to keep it alive, though, and these Zealots are going to be able to do some serious work over here. Another Disruptor comes in the mix for Neeb. Is it going to be enough? No, it whiffs completely. And now PiLiPiLi, he's between the natural and the third. He can even just send 1 or 2 Zealots over here to the third expansion and use that to start denying mining. Oh, that Disruptor shot is, the Disruptor is getting so far to the front. But you have to remember that as long as these armies are nice and small, PiLiPiLi is going to like that a little bit better. Archons are going to be a great choice from Neeb because PiLiPiLi's army is very heavily Zealot based. He doesn't have a lot of the Stalkers, he doesn't have a lot of the range units, and he doesn't have Disruptors. A big Disruptor shot goes off on a lot of these Immortals. The Immortals now very low on health. 2 of them go down to the second Disruptor shot. Another one very, very low on health. And Neeb is starting to hold on. He's starting to accumulate that army supply. I really do wonder if PiLiPiLi, I mean, I guess Photon Overcharge does discourage you from moving up, but there's only enough energy for Photon Overcharge right now. Oh, we have some of these High Templars moving on in. Photon Overcharge goes down. He makes it into an Archon. And yes, I like this. Moving on for a little bit. And gotta be careful not to use up all your units. But yeah, do something like secure the high ground with all these Zealots. And you get some of the Archons to the front. You have to get the Archons to the front. Oh no, losing a lot of the use of the Disruptors. Neeb takes an enormous supply lead. And I think that PiLiPiLi may just be losing a little bit too much here. He does a good amount of damage. I mean, he kills off some workers. He takes a supply lead, but oh, okay, well, a lot of these Disruptor shots actually killing off a lot of Neeb's own army, but Neeb just takes too big of a lead. PiLiPiLi has to tap out, and Neeb takes game number 1. Oh, what an action-packed couple of, like, minute or 2 from that game. But really well done by Neeb. I feel like PiLiPiLi, he was in a good spot, but after he got outside of the natural expansion, he took a really good engagement. He was pushing Neeb back, but I feel like there was that moment of hesitation where he was sort of making the judgment call, like, do I move into the natural expansion? Do I try and kill off my opponent's army before it builds up again? Because that's something you have to be scared of. As we saw, you know, the Disruptor count builds up, the Archons build up, the Archons doing a lot of damage to your Zealots and everything. But what we ended up kind of seeing was, I feel like PiLiPiLi sitting outside trying to do that, when maybe even just sending a couple of units, like 2 Zealots, I think 2 Zealots taken away from his main army wouldn't have hurt the engagements that he was taking that much. A lot of the damage that Neeb was doing was splash damage anyways. Those Zealots are filtering into a choke point. Being able to just deny mining at that third would have secured him maybe as more gateway units that could be warping in compared to Neeb. Maybe even forcing warp-ins up at the third expansion, giving him an opportunity to move up in the natural. These kind of small things I think could have worked, but it's really hard to say. Even with all the infinite vision that we have and, you know, hindsight, I'm sort of interested to see where things are going to go. We're going to be hopping into the next map, King Sejong Station. I do not have a map intro for this one either. It looks like Neeb is ready. We're getting ready. Well, I am. But I don't want to play it versus Neeb. Neeb, coach me! So I'm set to play versus Neeb right now. Okay. Okay. Well, thankfully Neeb leaves first. That was a little bit awkward. Neeb is actually really on point about that. I guess you can expect that he has good reaction times and reflexes. No, PiLiPiLi left. PiLiPiLi left. Let's see. Let's invite PiLiPiLi back in. Where's PiLiPiLi? He's in a lobby. Is he in this lobby? No. Leave your game. All right, cool. So sorry about that, guys. We are finally getting ready to hop into it. King Sejong Station gonna be the map. All right, PiLiPiLi's in full tilt. I just want to watch Fear Dragon play versus Neeb. You know, because if I watch somebody else lose to Neeb, maybe I'll feel better about myself. Because how badly I would lose to Neeb would be way, way worse than anything PiLiPiLi will ever have in a game versus Neeb. If Fear Dragon was a bartender, he'd be Beer Dragon. Yeah, I want to actually make a note. I know that there have been like subscriptions and everything or resubs in the chat every so often. I do apologize for any of those that I missed. It's been kind of hectic, especially when you solo cast. It's really hard to keep an eye on the chat, and I don't have Twitch alerts set up, unfortunately. Since Rifkin was, again, he was sleeping pretty late and everything last night, so I didn't really get a chance to message him about that. But regardless, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to hop into it. Game number 2 in this best of 3 for the winners semifinals. The DreamHack Valencia North America. I just muted myself for no reason. Here we go. Spawning down here in the bottom right-hand corner of the map on top of the blue Protoss player from Storm Gaming. Give it up for PiLiPiLi. And his opponent spawning up here in the top left-hand corner of the map, the red Protoss player from Ting and representing cellular data plans everywhere, or should I say lack of plans, because they don't require contracts, but they're still pretty awesome. Give it up for Neeb, as I do like a sponsor shout out for Ting, just because Ting has done a lot with BaseTradeTV. You've done the Ting Invitational, or not Invitational, Ting Open. Ting Invitational, for those who are wondering, even Rifkin says Ting Invitational sometimes, and it all stems from like a late game that In Control was on, and In Control called it the Ting Invitational. And ever since then, even Rifkin accidentally calls it the Ting Invitational sometimes. Alright, so here we go. PvP. I will say that last game, yes, Neeb ended up winning it, and he ended up winning that last fight pretty convincingly at the end. But there were a lot of things in that game that I really just felt like were going fairly evenly. I don't think that PiLiPiLi got completely outclassed. I don't think that he has to worry about saying, oh, I just don't have a chance against literal god Neeb. People are quite literally worshiping him in the streets. Like, it's not that bad. I think he has a fairly decent shot against him. But I will still say Neeb is a bit favored, not only statistically, historically, but I mean, even now, sitting up 1-0, you have to consider that Neeb only has to win one more game in a PvP, which again is a matchup that can be a little bit weird in terms of how build order openings can work and how it can lead to advantages for particular players sometimes. Just with the way that things go. I won't say that it's actually like coin flippy, because I really don't believe it is. But there are some things that can happen. The way things open up, there are distinct advantages given to a player. So it's a little bit easier for Neeb to rest assured knowing that he can just win one of the next 2 games. PiLiPiLi has to win both of them. Now, granted, there is a loser's bracket, so loser of this is not out of the qualifier entirely. But it's still very nice to go through in the winner's bracket, because that means you have to play substantially less matches. If you win this, you go on to the winner's finals, and the winner of that we'll pretty much just go on to, I think, the qualifying spot. But regardless, we do have the game start to pick up. We'd had double Adept openings, I think, for both of... No, double Stalker openings from both these players. What am I talking about? And we do have a nice little mix-up. The Sentry coming out over here for Neeb just a little bit earlier than PiLiPiLi. But for the most part, both of these guys opening up relatively similar. Neeb with a slightly lower Stalker count, as I guess Neeb did just go for the slightly earlier Sentry. No huge differences, I would say, in the play. I kind of like it a little bit earlier when you go for the earlier Sentry, if you can get away with it, just because you build up energy on it. You have a little bit more energy. You can always make that Stalker later, and it'll be exactly the same as making a Stalker earlier if they never get into a fight. If a Sentry doesn't get into a fight for a while, then hey, you got more energy on that Sentry. More energy for hallucinations, which, by the way, does not get a big scat off for Neeb. Generally, you do want to move in. You want to see if your opponent goes for Stargate, a Robo, or a Twilight. But getting picked off very quickly. PiLiPiLi is going to be able to throw down the robotic facility and a couple extra gateways behind this pretty comfortably without really being scouted. So Neeb does have to play a little bit safer. Maybe has to use up another hallucination as soon as he has enough energy for it. I think he'll have enough energy in about 10 seconds-ish. But Neeb is also going for his own robotic facility, going up for a Twilight Council as well. So both these players sitting on relatively even footing, besides the fact that Neeb has gotten up a much faster Twilight Council and is getting up Blink a little bit faster. Where are PiLiPiLi's resources going, though? Because they aren't going into workers. He's sitting 34 to 28 workers. There are a couple extra gateways out, I would say, for PiLiPiLi, as we end up seeing gateways 3 and 4 finishing up. And I guess it's just gateways. PiLiPiLi may be looking to put on a bit of Immortal Stalker pressure with no Blink, just straight up gateway units and maybe getting out that Warp Prism. Oh, but the Warp Prism is going to get caught by the Stalkers over here. Oh, man. Luckily for Neeb, PiLiPiLi is not going for Blink. Not that it would be finished up in time, but still keeping that Warp Prism alive. But also revealing it is actually a really difficult situation for for Neeb. The Sentry also catching wind of it. The Sentry's attack and pushed back the Warp Prism one more time. That might have been the time that he needed to buy to actually get his units over here. I don't know if Neeb can actually move across the map with that Warp Prism. He might need to keep it at home. He does have photon overcharges available, so maybe it's not going to be the hardest hold. He even uses the Adept to move in and scout out exactly what PiLiPiLi's composition is. But still, PiLiPiLi, he has a lot of sentries. He has a Warp Prism. He could very easily try an elevator up into the main base. He's not going to do so. He's going to try and reuse the Force Fields. There's a great position of Force Field between the pylon and the ramp. Keep out this Immortal, keep out a lot of these other units. But hey, Neeb has got some Force Fields of his own to answer the reply. A tense standoff, but the Immortal is going to give a distinct advantage to Neeb right now. The Immortal not getting in the mix, though. Photon overcharges helping out quite a bit, but PiLiPiLi using that Warp Prism to get his own Blinks off. Who needs to research Blink when you can just use your Warp Prism? Where is that Warp Prism for Neeb, though? It's got to be somewhere. It's sitting back in the natural expansion. He's been a little bit too tasked in the APM department to really move out with it. And now we're starting to see a couple of Stalkers over here. They do have Blink, so they can Blink out of here much more easily. They trigger the Immortal Shields for PiLiPiLi. The Adepts actually end up unloading over the main base, not focus firing down on these workers, but there is going to be another Warp-In of Adept that might, or sorry, no, a couple of Stalkers and some Zealots. Ooh, very interesting choice. Warp Prism is going to get focused firing down and eventually taken out, but PiLiPiLi taking an engagement over at the front. He has an Immortal of his own, and he's keeping those other Immortals out for a little bit, and he's actually winning in the fight in the main base as well, or at least taking a pretty decent trade. More and more of these units are coming in. 3 Immortals still left over for Neeb, and it looks like that's going to be enough to push PiLiPiLi back. He doesn't have the Warp Prism anymore either, so he cannot continue to reinforce. These Stalkers are going to be able to chase down these Immortals as well. PiLiPiLi may be falling 2-0 over here as Neeb manages to hold on, and PiLiPiLi is sitting pretty far behind supply. GG gets called. PiLiPiLi taps out, and Neeb is your victor. Moving on to the grand finals, or should I say the winners finals of the DreamHack Valencia North American Qualifier. So despite my hyping up of how well and how out of this world PiLiPiLi has been playing lately, Neeb is still showing that, you know what, you can play out of this world, but that's still the mortal world, and Neeb is a literal god. So you got to play a little bit better than that and able to take it. Ladies and gentlemen, we're hopping to a short little break while we find our next series, which I think will actually just end up being the winner of Monster versus Juggernaut Jason versus the winner of, or versus Neeb. We're going to find out if Masa versus Jason is done. I don't see any updates on the brackets, but only time will tell. We'll find out. You guys are watching the North American DreamHack Valencia qualifiers. My name is Fear Dragon.